Hello and welcome to today's edition of Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness. I'm Les Winston and I'm the president and chairman of the Endow America Network Foundation. Our principal objective is to endow America. We are a community foundation. Our belief is that the community can take care of the needs of the community better than anybody else can by the community working together in a concerted effort, sponsored and paid for by endowment, created through the community itself. And that's done without the intervention of or the support of government. Some governmental support is necessary, but we don't believe that government should be supporting non-governmental organizations. They need to be supported through the charitable sector. The way to do that, the way to endow, is through social charity. Social charity was created in 1969 by Congress. There were 3 sections of the tax code which allow you to do some amazing things with your assets. If you have capital gains tax, you can avoid it. If you want to reduce your estate tax, you can do that. If you want to reduce your income tax, you can do that. And all in order to make a philanthropic statement in the community. You can be a philanthropist. You actually are a philanthropist. If you're a taxpayer, you're already a philanthropist. You're just an involuntary tax-paying philanthropist. We'd like to make you a voluntary philanthropist. We want you to utilize the sections of the tax code that are so beneficial that the wealthy, ultra-wealthy in the United States have been using them for years. Now everybody can use them because of the technology. And also because there are advisors in the community now who are professional philanthropic advisors. The professional philanthropic advisor is someone who can help you go through all of the various types of social charity that are available in order to do what you want to have done or need to have done to solve a problem. And those problems generally have to do with taxation. They have to do with passing assets to other family members. They have to do with getting income from your assets, maximizing that income. All of those things are beneficial and they will help us build the charitable wealth. So our community foundation, Endow America Network Foundation, has available to you pooled income funds. We also have donor advised funds. We also have projects that will help you by sponsoring the projects. We have a lot of ways that you can use our community foundation to do the work that you want to do in the community for the benefit of the community, but also to benefit yourself and to help yourself in the future. We call that the theory of social charity, and that's 664, one of those sections of the tax code, equals E squared, where E is endowment. We want you to endow yourself first, make sure that you have income that you can live on, that you will be sufficient for you to live on, and a lifestyle that you are accustomed to. By utilizing your assets to a greater degree, utilizing social charity devices, you can create the endowment that you want for yourself, because income and guarantees of future income is a form of endowment, and that's the first endowment. The second endowment is what you leave behind. Social Security is very similar to what we're talking about in the sense that you put something into a fund, and at the end of the day, you're expecting to get income from it. But when you pass at the end of your life, unless you were married and have children, nothing is left to somebody else. You get $255, which you can use to help for your funeral expenses. But after that, the money disappears into the government ether. Social charity is different. You can accumulate all this money over your lifetime, and then when you pass, you can direct that into the community, and that helps support community and community foundations, support community efforts. My guest when we come back from the short commercial break is Michael Layton, and he is well-known international authority on the role that community foundations play in our society. We'll be right back.
You ever just want to tune out the world and relax? Then you've come to the right place. At Route664.org, we've got great music that will keep you entertained for hours and uplifting conversation that will make you feel good about yourself and the world. So come on in and take a load off. We won't judge here. Route664.org.
So we're joined now by my guest, Michael Layton. Michael Layton is is a chair at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and is involved with the Johnson Center. And Michael joins us now. How are you, Michael?
Les, I'm very well. I appreciate the invitation. I do have to offer a slight correction. Many people, when they see the name of the chair that I hold, they affiliate me with the Kellogg Foundation. My chair is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, along with the W.K. Kellogg Company Retirement Fund, but we're independent of the foundation. We're the Dorothy A. Johnson Center for Philanthropy is part of Grand Valley State University here in West Michigan, and we're an academically affiliated research center. So I owe a great debt of gratitude to W.K. Kellogg and his legacy, the endowment that he left behind. But I'm not directly affiliated or part of the foundation itself. Okay.
Thank you for that. So community foundations have been around for a long time. I know that the wirehouses have created a form of community foundation with the Fidelity Fund. They've become very large, actually. They've grown faster than most other nonprofits. And do you think that the public in general is getting used to or understanding the purposes of the community foundation, or how they work in general for the benefit of the community?
You know, Les, one of the interesting things about having lived abroad and worked internationally in this field is the many ways in which people use the term community foundation and understand that term. So there's sort of a narrow legalistic term that comes from the IRS that identifies a community foundation as a locally based public charity registered in the tax code that mobilizes resources with that geographic focus. In the United States, it's typically a city, not always. Sometimes it's a couple of counties. And then people can use the term community foundation to describe other sorts of entities. For example, there's quite a few women's foundations across the US. And in that case, the community that's being generous is a group of women that hold a set of values and priorities, mobilize resources, and generously share those resources with organizations. So we're in an interesting moment in the US where I think there's a lot of crosstalk about what philanthropy is, what counts as a form of community, what counts as generosity. There's, I'm sure you well know, and you've explored this idea that donor advised funds should be more heavily regulated. And there's that trade-off between individual liberty of the money that you've earned and you've saved and you want to dedicate to charity versus the public claims on, well, we don't want you to sit on that money forever. We want to have some hand in regulating who's eligible, who has clean books and they're operating according to the law and ought to be the recipients of that kind of charity.
So is the community foundation is more of an intermediary. I think that it would help if the way that a community foundation is defined is that it is a way for people to be able to have a hand in their own philanthropy, as opposed to when you give your money directly to a nonprofit organization that's a functioning nonprofit organization that's doing work in the community. That distinction is important. And I think that from the standpoint of the community foundation's benefits to all is that it is an expression of the community's philanthropy and the needs of the community itself. So it's more closely directed to a community. As you say, some of them are in county-wide or multiple counties. But the community foundation is generally I think the intent is to build more charitable wealth.
I think we're in complete agreement on that. And that role as an intermediary, there's an incredible value added in moving from just an individual that identifies a worthy organization to creating a community, identifying your values, having clarity around those values, and saying, we as a community, we think these are the priorities. And I think that action as a community is more inspirational. I think has a catalytic effect in generating more generosity, reassuring others about the value of the direction in which the community foundation wants to move the community.
Hmm.
And it can be a great convener. It can get involved with corporations and others so that it has a multiplier effect in the community that it's trying to serve. That's why I'm so delighted to hold the chair that I have, to do the work that I do, and to talk to somebody like you today.
So it is a non-governmental organization, and generally speaking, I don't know many community foundations who receive grants from the federal government or from state governments, as opposed to nonprofit organizations that are doing work where they do receive grants. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, in general, I think community foundations do rely more heavily on private funds, and depending on the nature of the nonprofit, they are more likely to turn to other kinds of public entities, governmental entities, to
So would you
receive support.
would you say that in building the community foundations, we are finding a way to help solve the national debt problem? Would you say that they're related in any way?
Hmm. Um, the size and scope of the federal government is such, when you compare it with the size and scope of the nonprofit sector,
Hmm.
that I tend to lean on the idea that they are complementary, and that the nonprofit sector and philanthropy itself can have greater flexibility, greater creativity, and can show the way forward. My favorite example of this is 911.
Okay.
This it was not born of the federal government or even a municipal government creating a quicker, easier way for people to get help. It
Hmm.
came out of a nonprofit and foundation support. And it was such a good and powerful idea, so useful and saved so many lives. It multiplied and spread across the country. And similarly, the way that we paint lines down our highways in the United States, the yellow solid lines dividing traffic that's going two ways, the white lines in between lanes of traffic, that came about by local initiative and creativity. Vaccines, there are a lot of incredible examples of this. So I think in the long run and indirectly, there could be a benefit to the growth of community foundations and other kinds of private philanthropies. Um, the solution to the national debt list, that's above my pay grade. So I'm grateful people like you are thinking about that and talking about it.
When I talk about it, I get a blank stare sometimes because the national debt is so huge. But one of the things that we understand about part of that debt is that it's coming from government supporting non-governmental organizations. And that's kind of an oxymoron. And one of the things that we are trying to accomplish with Social Charity is to build the charitable wealth using the devices that the government gave us all those years ago in 1969 that people are not using, and they're not using sufficiently or efficiently. And we want to use those devices to build more of the charitable wealth in the community foundations, to be directed by the people who are building the donor advised funds. And I think that the government's requirement of distribution is going to be an important factor there, because there's a lot of money that is sitting dormant that doesn't necessarily get distributed. And some of that is because I think the wirehouses would like to hold on to the assets under management as long as they can. But I believe that it has to be distributed. So you had experience in Mexico. I was reading your resume. In Mexico, do other countries think like America thinks? Do you think that the culture? I mean, de Tocqueville wrote the treatise on democracy. His idea about the fact that the local community can solve the problem rather better than the federal government. Do you find that to be true in other countries like Mexico?
I think the one thing that I would argue very forcefully is that human beings around the world, whatever country you find them in, are generous. and they have the willingness to help their fellow human being. I think that is universal. How nations have developed and the trajectories of their nonprofit sectors and how it gets institutionalized, those are unique related to governmental history. When de Tocqueville wrote Democracy in America in the 1830s, he visited the United States that had been created by a series of colonies. And basically, people from England came over, settled those colonies very independently from England and from one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a natural reliance on local initiative, local problem solving right from the start. And the tension, one of the key tensions in our country to this day are the differences between states and regions, and that fierce independent spirit. So even the United States of America was viewed as a plural noun up until Abraham Lincoln, or some people say Roosevelt. So that's that trajectory. When you come to Mexico, the conquistadores that came centuries before in the 16th century, they founded a very centralized form of government.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time that de Tocqueville wrote his treatise in the 1830s, Mexico had been undergoing decades of civil war and unrest. And the government has unfortunately been consistently corrupt in Mexico since that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it always was at odds with the idea of an independent sector. So there was never institutional support in the way that there has been in the United States. There was never that kind of interchange, positive interchange, the legitimacy of the right to association, of the right to petition government for the redress of grievances was never as firmly established or practiced or institutionalized in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that the development of things like community foundations are far behind. But I want to come back to the idea, people in Mexico are incredibly generous. I just spent 2 weeks there and was moved by local people, local business people who created initiatives in the countryside in these isolated rural areas that they were deeply concerned and channeled their generosity to them in a context where the government is incredibly hostile. I mean, we think we have problems with the IRS and the government here.
Yeah.
It's a whole different level today.
Yeah, lack of trust between the government and the citizenry, and the citizenry and the government. They're creative and resourceful in their own communities to help their communities when there is a need.
That's exactly right.
And isn't that the essence of human kindness?
I think so, and that's why I love the work that I do, and being reassured wherever I've been in this world. I've seen that local outpouring, right? Going back to the roots of what philanthropy is, the love of humanity, being expressed in big and impressive and world-changing ways, and in small, significant ways that touch a human life and help it take a better direction.
So we would like to have the younger listeners, our young order. If you're young out there and you're listening to this program, you know that we're interested in your well-being, and we want you to have the benefit of this kind of conversation, so you can see that this is not something. I know you're generous already, and I know that you want to do things to help, and I know that you want to do things to change the world, to make it a better place. And philanthropy is what that's all about. And what we want to impress on you, Michael and I, that you have the ability to use a community foundation to help you do things right away in a nonprofit, in a charitable way, without having to become a charitable organization in and of itself. I think that's important, Michael. I know that you're speaking around the country a lot, that you're talking about community foundations, and the number of people that are involved now in community foundations through the donor advised funds that they're getting to become more and more aware of that. But we're still missing that endowment piece. What would you say to, what is your feeling about encouraging more endowment building in these community foundations?
I think that what an endowment does is create a pool of shared resources so that you really are being part of a community today and well into the future. And so that idea of being, in a sense, permanently generous, building up that endowment is awfully important, and it gives the community foundation a greater ability to respond to the changing needs of a community. So I endorse the idea wholeheartedly of building up that kind of endowment.
And so going back to the national debt, our objective is to build 30 trillion in endowment using the social security devices that Congress gave us. It's not going to happen overnight, obviously, but there is a wealth transfer going on in the country, a significant wealth transfer. And what role? There's a lot of money that's going to transfer from one generation to the next. So, how do we encourage the kindness in people to give part of that to the future of their communities and the future of the country?
You know, Les, when you were starting to talk about youth, it really made me think about a program here in Michigan, two programs. One is called Learning to Give, and it's a website that has curriculum designed to cultivate a spirit of generosity and form the generosity K through 12. And the other one is a series of youth advisory committees, or YACs, right? We love our acronyms, right? So these are YACs, YACs. And these youth advisory committees are groups of high school students who are given a budget by the local community foundation. And they're told, we want you to identify needs among youth, needs in the community that maybe we're not seeing because we're not of the same generation. And the legacy of this program that now is about 30 years old is just remarkable. One of the youngest community foundation executive directors ever came out of that program. And I've run across a number of the young people that having that experience of giving early on in that systematic, thoughtful way in community has a lasting impact. And so I think planting the seeds so that we continue this trajectory is awfully important. And
I'd like to have more information on the YACs.
Yeah, I'd be happy.
I'd love to be able to start that here in South Florida. If it isn't already started, I haven't heard of it. I haven't heard that in acronym YAC, yakety yak. But to me, that is a really central nucleus that we could use to build more philanthropy. And I think that again, if you're thinking about being a philanthropist or you're thinking about what your future may be, when you have an opportunity to build a philanthropic model for yourself and to become employed by that philanthropic model, there's nothing that says you can't be employed by nonprofits. And the philanthropic model, if you can build it, you can make your own future. And this is something that we think is extremely important. And my guest, Michael Layton, is an expert in community foundations, and we appreciate very much your wisdom and your spending time with us this morning to talk about community foundations and the importance in the world today. We use the term 664, not war. 664 is more. We're obviously trying to build the 664 branding of 664. Just like a 401k, everybody needs to know what a 664 is and when they can use a 664 and that it's available. Obviously, if nobody knows about it, they can't use it. Right. So do you find in your work, are you seeing advisors now who are becoming more and more familiar with that kind of advanced planning or planned giving in general, where they're using some of these devices, or is it still kind of under the surface?
I think that philanthropy advisors in the U.S. Are generally incredibly sophisticated about the work that they do. And and the flexibility they have, and also recognizing that successive generations have different needs, different priorities. Um, uh, we've done some work here talking about next generation donors
Mhm.
and how they come in with an attitude, with a very different kind of attitude, being oftentimes more demanding, have higher expectations, sometimes more engaged than people traditionally have been, where
Mhm.
in the past, maybe people were happy to write a check and go to a gala. And a lot of the younger generations, they want more hands-on involvement with the cause so that their donation comes with volunteer time and with leadership and promotion. And I think advisors are being more sophisticated about responding to that sort of full 360-degree involvement that newer generations are looking for. So I think as I really firmly believe that Americans are becoming more generous. They are looking for these ways to help their communities. And I think all in all, the sort of backbone organizations, the support organizations, the advisors are recognizing that, and they're having to up their game in keeping up with new values and new practices.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Michael, Michael Layton. And we look forward to having further conversations because I think community foundations are so important, and the proper, I guess not marketing, but the proper expansion of them in the communities with young people is a great idea. And so I thank you very much for Yak. Is there a website for Yak, or a website that people can that our youth can reach out to, something where they can find out more?
Well, learningtogive.org is a great first stop. The youth advisory committees are many, if not all, community foundations in Michigan have one, so they're very local. It's kind of decentralized. But learningtogive.org is a great clearinghouse for information about those and other activities that youth can get involved in.
Great. Thank you very much for being on Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. You are a guide along that route. Thank you very much.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Take care. So we encourage you to learn more about the community foundations, what they can do. We are a community foundation, as Endow American Network Foundation, and our objective here is to make sure that you are educated about the ways that the myriad of ways that you can use the benefits of a community foundation to enhance your own well-being, your own wealth, your own family legacy, while really being a knowledgeable philanthropist, becoming an informed, we call them informed taxpayers. As I say, if you're a taxpayer, you're already a philanthropist, you're just an involuntary philanthropist. And we want to change that. We want to make you into a voluntary philanthropist because it's a good thing to do. And it's a good thing to see how you can actually turn what I used to call funny money into real money. And that funny money was always the tax dollars. So if you can turn tax dollars into spendable dollars without a lot of pain and without any, jeopardy in any way, because these things are already well precedented and they've been around for quite a while, then you need to find out more about what we do at socialcharity.org. And of course, tune into Route664.org radio and listen to our presentations that we've done in the past, where we've interviewed other folks who are in the philanthropic world, but also great music and great talent who will give you a lot of information about how to live your life. And so there's a lot of uplifting, good things about our happiness radio station. Tune into Route664.org. I'm Les Winston. I'll be with you again same time next week. And have a great week. Be charitable.